on 15945 Canal Road in Clinton Township, Michigan. Mr. Bode is, how old are you, Chuck?
82.
82 years of age, having been born in what year?
23.
In 1923, and he currently resides in, what does it say here, New Baltimore?
New Baltimore.
Very good. My name is Butch Koff, and I'll be the interviewer. I just met Chuck, and our videographer today will be Paul Wilhelm. Mr. Bode, would you state for the record what war and branch of service you served in?
I was in the United States Marine Corps during World War II.
Very good, sir. Let's start at the beginning. Chuck, you don't mind me calling you Chuck?
No problem.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you ended up in your branch of service.
Well, I was born in Fremont, Michigan. I went to high school, in Fremont. And when I graduated from there, I went in 1 year in college. And then I enlisted in the Marine Corps.
What college was that?
Western Michigan University.
Western.
Actually, it was some Michigan, I don't know, school, teachers college at that time. It wasn't a university at that time.
And then that's about when the time the war broke out?
No, this was after the war broke out. The war broke out in 41.
Right, but didn't you have a year of college after high school?
Yes, before I enlisted in the Marine Corps.
What caused you to enlist?
Well, just this glory of the Marine Corps, I guess.
Okay. So, when you enlisted in the Marine Corps, obviously, from where you grew up and stuff, that was a rural area?
Oh yes, in fact, I was on a farm. Actually, we had 5 acres out of my grandfather's farm that we lived on right next to him.
Uh-huh.
So most of my childhood was in farming, and then they had horses, and the year they got the tractor was the year I went to college.
Okay, great. So now here's a farm boy that enlisted in the Marine Corps. Where did you leave from? Where did you go to? Your boot camp?
Okay, we went to San Diego for boot camp, and then to Camp Pendleton.
Okay.
From Camp Pendleton we went to Hawaii, the big island of Hawaii.
Okay, we don't want to cut short any of these travels, so you're in Fremont, where are you living at? Fremont at the time? And
Yeah.
Where did you go to enlist?
To Detroit.
Detroit, and you went through your physicals and everything there?
Well, yeah, there's one interesting thing though,
Okay.
is the fact I went to enlist in Kalamazoo and they turned me down because I was colorblind.
Oh.
And I went and saw the local optometrist, and he said there wasn't anything they could do for me because I was colorblind.
Right.
I walked out the door, he said, wait a minute. He said, which one of these charts did you use? And so I took and memorized the numbers and went down to Detroit and passed.
Ah, so you kind of cheated just to get in the service, right?
Well, I wouldn't call it cheating.
No, I wouldn't call it either. I'd call it an honorable effort to get into the military and do your duty.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went from Detroit and you passed your did you enlist in the Marines, or did they come around and say you're going to be a Marine?
No, I enlisted in the Marine. Actually, I knew I was going to get my draft papers real soon, so I thought I'd beat my draft papers and go enlist.
Right, well, great. So here you are in downtown Detroit with a bunch of other young men, and they're going to tell you, okay, you're going to San Diego, did you say?
Yes.
Because they had a Marine boot camp there?
Right.
Okay, so tell me about your boot camp experience.
Well, it was a regular boot camp,
Well, for our audience who doesn't know too much about boot camps, maybe give us a little highlight or two.
Well, they condition you.
Oh, yes?
They put you through a lot of rigorous things. They even take and put you through one where they're firing live ammunition just over your heads and you got to crawl.
I see.
So you better be crawling low.
Yeah, this is kind of a new thing for a guy from Michigan, right?
Well, I'm used to guns, because as a farmer I was a hunter too.
Right. So that was the physical part. I'm sure there was a little mental part about being, especially the Marine Corps, a little spick and span effort that they want you to put your whole effort into.
Well, they make sure that you were well trained. There's no question about that.
Right. So You were just an infantryman at the time, or did you have a special assignment, or?
No, I was just, well, I wouldn't say infantry. When I went into the Pendleton, then I was put into the engineers.
Ah,
And I was actually trained as an engineer.
specifically to build or construct or do what?
Well, I was assigned to a road grader,
Uh-huh,
and we built roads.
okay.
And we built roads on Iwo Jima that weren't used for several days after we built them because it was too much live fire.
Yeah, so you were given an opportunity to learn to drive some big tractors. Of course, you might have had some farm experience there.
Yeah, we used the
Graders?
bulldozers, yeah.
So now after Camp Pendleton, what year was this now? 19?
This has been in 1943.
43, okay. So the war's been going on a little bit.
Right.
So now after Camp Pendleton graduation, you got a duty assignment?
Well, we went to Hawaii, and one of the things in Hawaii, because of my light skin, I sunburned, and they almost sent me back to the States because I was sunburned so bad. But then in the last minute, they decided to keep me with the Marines over there, and we went to Iwo Jima.
I see. Yeah. Well, I remember that. Yeah, you could get court-martialed for being too sunburned, but it wasn't your fault. You were just fair-skinned.
Yeah. So,
Right. So are you kind of concerned, excited about going into war? After Hawaii, you're put on what kind of a troop carrier? Obviously, you didn't tell me about your trip across the Pacific.
well, it was just a regular Alice, warships, what do they call them? I forget what they call them.
A troop carrier of some sort?
Yeah, but they had a special name for those warships back then. They would build them real fast.
Yeah.
Weren't they Liberty ships?
That's right. I think you're right. The Liberty ship.
So tell me about your sea experience from a farm boy on solid ground to being in the middle of the Pacific Ocean there. Was that exciting or unusual, or?
Well, it's new, you know, because I've never been on the big ocean before. But I wouldn't know it was exciting. There was one thing that the ships always had a library. And there's one thing that another fellow Marine and I did was memorize poetry
Uh-huh.
to see who can memorize the most poetry.
So you haven't gotten rid of that academic influence you had from Western, have you? No.
Probably not. But I memorized an awful lot of poetry back then.
Right. Was that, you think, a calming effect on your mind and soul because you were going to war, or you just was interested?
Well, that's one of the things you just accept, that's all.
Right.
You know.
Okay. So here you are now on a troop carrier going to Iwo Jima out of Hawaii.
Right.
Okay. Obviously, you're leaving a beautiful island of sun and fun, and you're going to war. You've never been to war. What did you expect?
Well, I don't know if there's anything other than what I saw I expected, you know. There's a lot of firing from the island out to the ships and the ships to the island.
So you have not, you are participating in the launch on Iwo Jima. This is,
Yeah, you see, the first day that they went to Iwo Jima, they did not take the road graders and that into the island because it was too secure.
right.
So we were floating out there in the ocean in the small LSDs to the time that we could actually go in, which was the following day.
Right. You were still in like the second wave of
You know,
landing.
You might say that. That's
Yeah.
right. You know, but one of the things that I remember there very vividly is when they raised the first flag. We all yelled and hooped and hollered, but we didn't even see the second flag, the one that's the most famous, because that was the next day that they raised that flag.
I see. And I understand the story there was they did raise a flag, and then some colonel or captain or whatever wanted to put a larger flag.
That's correct.
So they took down the first one, and the one that's most photographed in the monument in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
is actually of the second flag.
Right. And of course, we lost about half of our company on Iwo Jima.
Could you see that flag from the ship, or?
Well, I wasn't on the ship. I was on the bottom at the base of Suribachi.
Okay, so I mean, this is
I was
after
on
you
the
went
island.
on in the second
Oh,
wave.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that they actually raised their first flag.
Well, Iwo Jima wasn't really a big island,
Oh no.
but it was enough.
Where we landed wasn't even a mile across. Only about a half a mile across where we landed.
Okay. Now, are you driving your vehicles off the ship, or somebody else, or a crane, or?
No, we're driving them from an LSD and onto the sand and up the hill.
Okay. Now, are you being shot at?
Well, there's mortar being fired all around you all the time.
Okay.
They assigned two of us to equipment,
Uh-huh.
and the other fellow that was assigned to the equipment with me did get hit, and of course I had to do it every day after that because there wasn't anybody to relieve him.
Okay. All by yourself you did that.
Yeah.
Now, what was part of your assignment there?
Just to build roads.
Just to kind of pave roads, eh?
Well, not paved.
I mean, to yeah.
build roads, carve them out
Okay.
so that they can get the equipment that they need over them.
Right. So, how long were you there on Iwo Jima?
We were there about 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
So, in all this time, you were just sleeping very little, trying to duck when the mortars went off, and
You dug a foxhole every night. to
I bet.
Sleep in.
Right. Now, on a more sad personal note, how many guys did you personally see, know that maybe got injured or killed, or was that awakening experience for you?
Well, I don't know what you call awakening experience. Naturally, you expect that when you're at war, that there's going to be casualties.
Right.
And one of the things that several of our boys happened to get was a bullet made out of bamboo, and when the bullet hit you, it split up, and you weren't that bad off, but they took you and put you aboard ship, and you died from the infection because they didn't have the antibiotics back then to cure the infection.
Now, I would assume a bullet that's been a bamboo bullet, for it to do any kind of serious damage, has to be fired from a close range.
No, not really.
Really? Okay.
You could have it for at least a couple hundred yards.
Okay. Which I was going to point. I thought the enemy was naturally really pretty close. Either that, or they were in those caves and stuff. But
No matter where you were in the island, the enemy was close.
yeah. So now I know. I would assume, since you had that year of college, you're much more cerebral than the rest of these young men. Was that an advantage for you?
No, our company was made up of all fellows that have basically it's been in college.
Ah.
I don't know how come, but that's what our company was basically made up of.
Maybe because of the equipment that you had to operate and the construction
That could be.
Yeah. So obviously you had some little R&R in Hawaii, but now it's strictly business, war.
Well, after Iwo, we went back to Hawaii again for R&R.
You did?
And then we got ready to go to occupy Japan.
Okay. Well, I know you're going pretty fast there, and I know there's a lot more, the history from, California to Hawaii to Iwo Jima. Tell us a little bit more about this war experience that you had. I know it probably went by pretty fast in your mind, but 3 weeks can seem like a year if you're being, fired at. And
well, the thing is, I remember one of the things at the airport there in Iwo, we have to get that ready to take the big planes.
So you're working on a runway?
We have done part of the time. We worked on the runway to get it. And one time, one of the planes ran off the end of that runway, and we had a hard time pulling them back on the runway with the tractors.
Oh yeah. Well, I assume too that the enemy, the Japanese at the time, didn't want you to occupy that island, period. But for sure now they recognize you're putting in a landing strip in an airport of some sort.
You got to remember the plane took off with the atomic bomb from Iwo.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Did you see it? Was it
no, that was, we were back in Hawaii when that happened.
Okay. Was that both of them, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, or just the Enola Gay, or?
Well, we were out 2 days out of Hawaii, out of Honolulu actually, when the first bomb was dropped.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that came over the radio, that the things that were falling out of the air the next day, it was that big of a bomb.
Oh,
And then of course when the second bomb was dropped, and then of course a day or two later the war was over and
Right.
the ship could be lit at night and all that. And I was actually aboard the first ship that landed in Japan after the war.
is that right? Well, okay. So I'm just gonna take you back. You're on Iwo Jima. Do you anticipate being there a long time, or did just kind of said, okay, get this runway, get these roads built, and we'll
No, actually when we went into Iwo Jima, it was supposed to be just a 2-3 day operation
for you, the engineers.
for everybody.
Oh,
That's all it was supposed to be. We were supposed to go in and take that island within 2-3 days.
they thought
And it didn't turn out that way.
right, because there was more resistance than they anticipated.
That's correct. One of the things that I remember from there, there was a cannon in a cave on Suribachi
Mhm.
that you could see the Japanese would fire that cannon toward the ships, and the recoil would take it back around a corner where they could reload it and bring it back out to fire it again.
Just the natural recoil.
Just the natural recoil from the gun would take it back around. It was a cannon. You know.
Uh-huh. Well, that's kind of
And we could watch it, you know, we could stand there and watch it fire, you know, at the ships out there.
yeah. How was their shooting eye? Were they accurate, or they just
Well, they didn't do that well.
right? Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Did you ever have to physically get off your tractor or whatever and fire your rifle, or
No,
take cover, or
no, I never did.
no?
No, I never got a chance to do that.
Any close ricochets from shrapnel or bullets on your tractor that you recollect?
Well, just one time the gas cap on the tractor was shot off while I was working on it.
A little nerve-wracking, I would
Yeah.
say. But
But I learned to live with that.
yeah, well, I guess you are one of the fortunate ones that learned to live with that.
Yeah.
Now, how were you when you obviously you seen a lot of death and wounds and stuff like that? Was that surprising to you, or because of your old deer hunting experiences, you've seen blood and guts before?
I wouldn't say it was surprising. That's one of those things you just anticipate when you're that's
Right.
all. If those things are going to happen.
So you really had a mindset to deal with all of this.
No problem at all.
No problem at all, and that's really a credit to you and your self-taught, obviously, ways of accepting things. You're a very lucky man to have that within you. So okay, so now you go back to Hawaii R&R. Okay, I don't know if you want to tell all those stories here in front of your wife. I'm sorry I didn't introduce her before, but you just obviously you went to the library and studied poetry again.
No. No, when we went back to Hawaii, of course we had all the beer we wanted, you know,
Uh-huh.
back then. And I usually had a bottle of beer before I rolled out of the sack in the morning.
Oh, okay, well, it's kind of like breakfast of champions.
Well, that's another thing that was really interesting. Anytime you went to go to the galley to eat, if there was a lot of noise coming from the galley, you knew the food wasn't very good.
Ah,
But if it was real quiet, you knew the food was real good.
the guys were chowing it down.
Yeah.
Well, you Marines ate pretty well, I think, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever scraps
Of
the
course.
Navy had left over, they'd give to you.
On Iwo, of course, we had nothing but K rations and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
type of thing.
So you're bathing. How did you get a chance to go to Pearl Harbor and view that and the devastation when you were there to see?
Yeah, we pulled from the Big Island of Hawaii. We pulled into Pearl Harbor before we went to Japan,
Uh-huh.
and they had a couple of days of liberty where we could go on shore. Although I didn't, I stayed aboard ship at that time.
Uh-huh.
But we could see all the boats, the battleships that were sunk, you know.
Yeah.
And
You were right there to view all of that and see the devastation that was caused.
and of course, I've been back there in recent years too.
Yeah. So, were you aware that you were going to go to Japan after your tour? And
No, that's one thing, you never know where you're going. When we went to Iwo, we never knew we were going to be at Iwo till after we were there.
Right, right.
And we just kind of anticipated that we were headed for Japan, to invade Japan at the time, but we really didn't know it.
Right.
Because it could have been some other island that we were going to.
Right, so you're on the boat now, on your way to Japan?
Yes.
Okay. Now, being an engineer, that's got to be a little bit different going to, Japan, who had just surrendered. It's like, well, what am I going to do there? What did you expect?
Well, of course, one of the things, being the first ship that was there, when we went ashore, we did not see any Japanese. Only those that were there to help us, for the work in the docks and so forth.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't until about the third day that the Japanese began to pour out of the hills, because they knew we weren't going to rape them, and we were giving them candy bars
I see.
and cigarettes and things like that.
Yeah, what, did you anticipate any conflict when you were there?
No, not when we were in Japan.
Okay. Where did you land in Japan?
In Sasebo.
Sasebo.
Yeah.
And,
Then we, of course, they took us and showed us Nagasaki, so we could see what a devastation the atomic bomb was. And then we went to a town called Kumamoto, and there I was assigned to the water supply for the city, because the camp got its water from the water supply.
okay.
And we worked for 6 hours, and then we had 24 hours off.
So you wanted to manage that and make sure it wasn't sabotaged?
That's right. That was all we did. We didn't work it, we just supervised it
Right.
to make sure that it wasn't sabotaged.
Now, there probably weren't too many military Japanese there, but the civilians, they're very proud people. How did they, talk to you, embrace
Oh,
you?
yeah. Well, one of the things, you see, I spent over 6 months in Japan before I had enough points to come back home.
Right.
And we I learned the Japanese language well enough to converse with the Japanese.
Ah,
And when I'd go on Liberty, I could talk to the Japanese and
make your way around.
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting.
no, we had no problems in Japan at all
Yeah.
with them being.
What were your impressions of Nagasaki?
Well, the one thing as we came into Nagasaki is the hilly country there, and the tops of the hills were blasted right off. And down in the valleys, the homes were just as like they used to be.
Okay.
But then when we got to Nagasaki, it was only the concrete buildings that were still standing. If it wasn't concrete, it wasn't there. It was
Right.
level.
So, did you actually drive through some of the towns?
Well, actually, they put us aboard a train and took us into Nagasaki.
Right.
And we only spent about 20 minutes downtown Nagasaki, and the train just backed right out again.
Right. Had you ever heard of the word radiation before?
No, I don't think anybody knew about that then.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a devastating weapon that we had there. But so you go back to guarding our water supply for your troops there, right? And trying to garner enough points to come home.
Yeah.
Was there any R&R in Japan other than?
Yes, there was one place. We took a train for 3-4 hours up into the mountains, and there were some Western-style hotels up there, and they had the pool that came from the volcanoes of the hot water.
Uh-huh.
And the water flowed from the one pool to the next pool down to the third pool, and you had to get into the lower pool first because it was too hot to get into the upper pool. And the time you got in the upper pool, if you were there over an hour, somebody had to pull you out because you couldn't get out anymore. It was
You would be
hot.
like a lobster.
That's right.
Interesting, very interesting. So, pretty much now you're ready to come home. You're anticipating getting your points and being shipped back home.
Yep.
Okay, so what happened on that particular day when the word came that Chuck can go home?
Well, Nancy, we're happy to be able to go home, you know.
Right. How many years you been in by this time?
You mean in the Marine Corps? Probably
Yeah.
about 3 years, I think.
3 years.
Yeah.
Were you given any medals or anything in this meantime? You know, unit citations?
Well, we had those strip medals, you know.
Okay.
But I don't know whatever happened to mine.
Okay.
In fact, we did find my old Marine Corps suit
Did you?
a couple of years ago, but
And you
I
tried it on?
I couldn't get into it.
Well, you tried probably. So here you are, ready to come home. How old are you now?
82.
No, now, but I mean back
then,
in Japan.
I wasn't quite 21.
Not quite 21. You've had some war experiences. You've had some sights and sounds you'll never forget, obviously. And you're coming back home. And so, are you coming home from Hawaii or from Japan?
No, actually, when we landed in, where did we land? I think San Francisco. Then they took us by train back to the Great Lakes.
Yeah, did you leave from Hawaii then? From Japan back to Hawaii to...
No, well, wait a minute.
Okay.
When we were headed back home after the war, after I had my 9 points,
Right.
there was a tidal wave, and our ship was involved in this tidal wave, in which a lot of people were killed in Hawaii at the time, because we were probably north of Hawaii by quite a few miles.
Right.
And the ship actually went from side to side, so that the piano and the galley broke loose, and I don't know how many fellows ended up with broken bones with that piano flying.
Is that right? Wow. So that was that the ship you were going to come back on, or the ship you were on?
That was the ship I was on coming back home.
Oh man, were you a little bit taken aback with all that ship movement?
We realized that it was coming, you know.
Uh huh.
And we were told to
You
go to our
secured.
bunks and stay there. You
Right.
know. And I did, you know, went to my bunk and stayed there. But the ship did rock back and forth pretty with that tidal wave hit it.
Now I know the Marines are a very proud group. Tell me about a little bit of the discipline that you had to go through. You know, because they're a no-nonsense, you know, Semper Fi.
Yeah. Well, one of the things originally when we went to Camp Pendleton, they told us we were going to ship out and to be ready, you know. And our lieutenant told us if we got the stuff loaded on the train to go, that we could go on leave for 2 days. And when we got him ever done right away, he says, "I'm sorry, but you can't go on leave."
Yeah, okay.
So we went on leave anyway.
Oh. That was, that's...
And when I came back, the penalty we had was taking our toothbrush and scrubbing the sidewalk in front of the barracks.
That's the Marine discipline I'm talking about. So, you learned that pretty quick that, yeah. Now, I don't know of too many Marines that don't have tattoos. You don't have any tattoos?
No, I don't have any tattoos.
No.
I
Didn't
never,
want one.
I never got that drunk.
Okay. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. So now you're coming back and you land in San Francisco.
And they take us by train to Great Lakes in Chicago.
Great Lakes, Illinois.
Yeah, is it Illinois? I thought it was, yeah, it would be Illinois.
Oh, yes. I've been there.
You've been there, okay. Anyway, they let us go from there. So I hitchhiked from there to Fremont.
Oh, my goodness. Did they give you any money to get on a train, or you wanted to save that money they gave you?
Well, probably that, with the fact that I could get there quicker hitchhiking.
Ah. Yeah. Okay. So, now you get back home in Fremont.
Yeah.
By the way, you're single all this time too, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so you get back home to Fremont. You got 1 year of college under your belt. What are your plans?
Going back to college.
Go back to college.
Yeah.
So you went back to the Western Michigan, or
Yeah.
the teachers' college that it was going to be?
Right at that time, yeah.
Okay.
University now.
Right. Are you considered a war hero back home?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't feel that way.
Right.
You know, I did it like everybody, a hero.
You're just doing your duty.
Did my job.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
now you're back at Western Michigan.
Yep, well, when I went back, of course, you're under the GI Bill.
Right.
Which helped. In my entire time, I never had to have any finances from my parents. I earned my way through college.
Right.
And of course, when I was going to college afterwards, I had all kinds of jobs. I worked for an undertaker, I worked for a florist.
Uh-huh.
One of the interesting things is I worked for Coca-Cola.
Ah,
And everything was in glass bottles back then.
right.
And we'd sit there behind the light and watch them bottles go by, and the ones that had cigarettes still in and so forth, we had to pull off the line. You know?
Yeah.
And I drank so much Coke at that time, I cannot drink carbonated drinks today.
Very interesting. But you know, too, that obviously farming wasn't in your future.
Oh, no, I
And
knew
you
that.
had a gift for teaching?
Well, I don't know as I say I had a gift for teaching.
Well, it's what you wanted to do.
I had gone to college and got a bachelor's degree,
Uh-huh.
and I decided that in teaching you at least have your summers off,
Ah,
you know.
you're really a bright young Marine, aren't you? I can tell. Yeah.
But for example, at one time I went to, after the war, I went to work for Gerber Baby Food,
Uh-huh.
and I was a field man. And during the summertime, a lot of time I'd have my 40 hours in and went to work on Tuesday morning.
Ah,
And I decided that that isn't what I wanted to do. I'll go to teaching where I got my summers to go golfing. And,
okay, okay.
and
So what about your civilian life now? What are you doing here? You obviously,
I'm retired.
well, true, but tell me a little bit about the progress from college, you graduate, you're teaching, and, you know, the start of your family.
Well, the first thing after I graduated from college, I got myself married, and we had 5 children.
5 children?
Yeah.
And who did you marry?
Alice Bode, or Alice Sam, actually at the time.
Uh-huh.
Of course, there's a lot of interesting stories with that, but we won't talk about them today.
Okay. Well, okay.
But then
You had 5 children?
yes,
So what did we have? Boys, girls?
we have 3 boys and 2 girls.
3 boys and 2 girls.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, when I went into teaching, I first taught chemistry and physics in, what's the name of that town?
Was that Royal Oak?
Yeah, not Royal Oak, but Clawson,
Ah, Clausen.
in Clawson. And then it was that I decided, after working 2 years there, I went to work for Gerber for a year, and then I went back to teaching again in Whitehall.
Because of those summers off.
Right.
Yes.
And then from Whitehall as a teacher, I went to Edwardsburg as a principal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went from Edwardsburg as a principal to Cass County as a county superintendent.
Okay, so what made you want to get into administration? Because obviously you had a love for teaching.
Probably the more money that
Uh-huh.
than it is for
See,
teaching.
I said you were a smart young Marine.
And then of course I went from there to being a superintendent of schools in Leslie and Clintondale and in Roseville.
Ah, I'm an East Detroit guy, so I won't hold that against you being a Roseville superintendent.
Okay.
So after that, you had this long teaching career, and your children are all grown. How many grandchildren do you have?
14.
Oh, 14. They keep you busy?
And then we have 3 step-grandchildren.
Okay,
so,
3 step-grandchildren.
So actually we have 17. Well,
Yeah.
no, I have 18 because I have 19 because I have 2 great-grandchildren.
Oh, see? You're losing count. They're coming
Yeah,
on.
They're coming on too fast.
Yes, they are. So, well, I see you brought some souvenirs and memorabilia here. You want to talk about that?
Well, this one here is a book that our company produced after Iwo Jima.
Okay, let me hold this up
we-
for you.
And we were given a outline of this And I did the carving to carve this out for a cover to our book.
And where did this wood come from?
Those are the ends of orange crates.
Ends of orange crates, and being the engineer that you are, you must have some artistic craftsmanship, because you carved out this little marine logo. And what is this emblem on the front? The victory with the this one.
That's the 5th Division.
The 5th Division.
That's the 5th
The
Division.
Marine 5th Division. And so then we open this book up, and it is a little story from January 15th of 44 to August 15th of 1945. Now this is your experience where? In Iwo Jima?
At Iwo, right.
At Iwo.
Actually, it starts out with the boot camp and training before.
Okay, you know, when you were in boot camp, how many of these so-called engineers that you ended up with training, how many survived? And you know,
Well, only half of our company survived Iwo Jima.
Oh,
the
man.
other half didn't. And of course, of the half that did survive, probably half of them are Purple Hearts.
So this is basically a history of that experience.
Right. In fact, on next page, yeah, right there is a list of all the ones. We had one fellow who was missing in action, and there were only 3 Marines missing in action in Iwo.
Wow. And you knew some of these guys personally,
Oh yes, I knew most of them very personally.
and
Quite a nice
this is
platoon.
quite a memorabilia for you. You know.
Oh yes.
Okay, what? Oh, you got a couple other things here.
Yeah, this is a 5th Division Marine Corps book that takes you from the beginning of the 5th Division until after the war, and it takes you into Japan.
I see, and here on the inside the cover is your basic trip. You went from San Diego to Hawaii. Did you stop at these other islands here?
No.
Butch, open that up a little
Oh,
more.
I'm sorry.
We did not.
Did you make a direct trip from Hawaii to Iwo Jima?
Right. Never
And-
saw land in between.
And did you go to Hawaii straight to Japan without any?
Right.
And here it says Japan right back to well, San Diego, but you went to San Francisco.
I think I could have been San Diego.
Okay, whatever.
But
You know?
you see, this is probably the first ones that went home after the war.
Oh.
I didn't have the points to go home. I was too young.
Yeah, explain that points. You had to have points, and was it your length of service?
Your age was part of it.
Uh-huh.
Your length of service was part of it. And,
Did it have anything to do if you were married or had kids, or?
Yeah, I think if you were married, they gave you a few more extra points.
I see. And then we have one more book here. It's the 5th Division. It's called the Spearhead. And what was this? This is just a general magazine that they gave you? A couple?
That's a one on Iwo, but the other one is on Japan.
Ah,
This one here is Occupation in Japan. This one here is another book on Iwo.
this is a very rare book, probably. You know, not too many soldiers, Navy, or Marines were ever in Japan immediately after the surrender.
I doubt if you'll find other copies of these books.
Right. Did you have any interpreters in Japan when you were there to help you?
No, I learned the language.
Well, I know you did, but what,
from
you
this
know.
book.
And here's a young man who's got his discharge, honorable discharge. That could have been a picture of you.
That's true.
That's true. What rank did you have when you finally left?
Corporal.
Corporal.
Yeah, I was a PFC
PFC
most of the time.
most of the time?
That was good enough for me.
Good enough for you. You kept clean. Obviously, these people in Japan, you know, the civilians had a very difficult time, you know, supporting the war, and yet that country, you know, they're very honorable, and now they lost the war. They treated you like a conqueror, or just
No, they treated us fine. I had no problem, you know. Of course, one of the advantages I probably had is I worked at the water plant,
Yeah.
and that's where the civilians were. See, some of our people were in camp all the time,
Okay.
and never was out in the public like I was.
Yeah. So here's another souvenir you brought in. This is what, a Japanese
Samurai sword.
samurai sword?
Yeah,
And where did you get this at?
in Japan,
As a souvenir, or you took it off of
as a souvenir.
as a souvenir? And,
I also have two rifles, a Japanese 25 caliber and a Japanese 31 caliber. But I made hunting rifles out of them after the war.
well, okay. My question, because I'm personally interested, how did you get those back from Japan? In your sea bag?
Well, you carry them back, yeah.
And you didn't have to turn those in?
No, oh no. Oh no, we didn't have to turn these in at all.
They said, hey, you earned them, and well, this is.
I have two samurai swords.
What do you think you paid for this back then?
I didn't pay anything for it.
Oh, you stole it?
No, it is giving a steal from the Japanese.
Well, how did you get it?
I really don't remember exactly how I got it.
Okay.
Because I have two of them.
Right. Maybe you traded it, some fresh water for a samurai sword.
Well, I could have won it in the poker game too.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, you weren't just reading poetry. You were doing some other things too, I see. Okay,
Yeah,
so that's interesting. And lastly, here I see you brought a souvenir that is a
Japanese flag.
Japanese flag that I don't want to. Maybe I should open it up. And what's all the signature and stuff on it?
The boys, Marines I dealt with.
The Marines. Can you see that there, Paul? And a lot of autographs and notes and
Right.
stuff.
Just autographs.
So when you got back now, one of the things I'd like to ask you, did you join any service organizations?
No, I didn't. Other than you want to call the Lions Club, the service organization.
Okay, but nothing militarily.
No, I didn't join the VFW or the veterans, foreign wars.
Did you keep in contact with any of your ex-Marine friends?
I did for a few years with a couple of them, but then that finally stopped.
When you went, were a lot of Michigan guys with you in
No,
Camp Pendleton? And
no, very few.
very few.
Very few. In fact, in our company, there was only two of us from Michigan.
And for boot camp, how many guys went to San Diego, and how many guys went to the East Coast to go over to Europe? You have any idea?
I don't think any of them went to Europe,
No?
because the war in Europe was all over with them.
Well, it was probably winding down a little bit.
No, the war in Europe was over before the war in Japan was over.
True. Okay.
Yes. You see.
So, lastly, how did you think that the service, your Marine service, your military service, how did it affect your life and your thought process?
I really don't know how to answer that one.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
you picked it because it was something you felt was a duty to do.
yes, naturally.
Okay, you were a rural man, not
I was a city boy.
not a city boy, and you came back and you had this ambition for various reasons to teach, and that obviously has been a rewarding career. Would you, in your heart and mind, tell another young man to take the same route if you could, or would you point him in different directions? Because you have that influence.
No, I'd say take the same route,
Okay,
Work hard.
work hard,
Study.
study.
See, there's one of the things that I look at different than a lot of people. I went to college to learn, not to get degrees.
Ah.
And even though I did end up with 3 degrees, I didn't go there to earn a degree. When I was a county superintendent, the special education in Michigan was only in one county. And the legislature changed the law so that all counties could have special education. And the first year after that, there were 16 counties in Michigan that became special education counties.
Right.
And I was superintendent of one of them.
Ah.
And so I went back to college and took several courses in special ed.
You recognize that that was a needed
Oh, yes. no
curriculum, and you know, because people out there had special.
That's right. But back then, if they were blind or deaf, you had to go to Lansing.
Right.
You don't have that anymore.
You know, we have local.
You have all that local.
So, well, is there anything else you'd like to say about your military experiences, or look into that camera and tell us, you know, from your
No,
deepest thought process?
No, I think I've told pretty well the story of what I felt and what I did.
Yeah, I'm sure down the road back home you're going to say, doggone it, I wanted to say this.
Oh, undoubtedly, you always do that.
Right. Is there anything you'd like to say about your husband's?
Well, with his special education, he helped write the book to create special education in Michigan.
So
To administrate it.
so you were a very active participant.
Oh, that's another thing too.
Oh, okay, great.
Come to think of it. In New Baltimore, 20 years on the Board of Review. And I spent 25 years on the Planning Commission. No, 25 years on the Board of Review and 20 years on the Planning Commission. So I have been active in local politics. And I have been a Lions Club member for over 50 years.
Very good. Very honorable thing to be. Lassie, I can assume, because I know through my experiences being in the military, that there was a lot of things I learned, like you did, as a youth, probably in the military. The honor that's in your heart obviously carried you through to some more worthwhile and valued experiences as an educator and a semi-politician. Oops.
Well, there's
Okay, don't be talking while I'm flipping here. Okay, I just want you to kind of expound upon that, because your life is formed when you're young, and I know that at your age, going into the Marine Corps, there had to be some things there that have stuck with you through the years.
Well, the one thing is that after being in the Marine Corps, I had matured so much that I was before, And when I went to college before, I had average grades, and after I went in the Marine Corps, I was an all-day student.
And you contribute that a little bit to that military experience.
Oh yeah, no question about that.
Is it the discipline you're taught, or the values that come out of being a Marine, and the
Well, I think it's more or less the disciplines that you're taught.
Right.
They carry on over,
they cut that umbilical cord pretty quick in the boot camp, don't they?
That's right.
So, well, sir, Chuck, I'm honored to know you. I'm honored to and blessed to interviewed you, and I personally want to thank you on behalf of Paul and myself for your honored service. And there again, we're going to take all this information and we're going to send it on to the Library of Congress, and they're going to put it into their historical references. Anybody in the future that would like to hear about Chuck Bode and his war experiences and service experiences and his good life is welcome to it. So let me shake your hand, sir. I'm very proud to know you and meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.